Sato was a poor pervert loser who couldn't win a fight to save his life and always seemed to fall into outrageous circumstances. But one day, after his bummy broke ass got beat over half-price bento, his hunger couldn't take anymore, so he seeks out the advice from the legendary wolf named the Ice Witch, and begins his path of becoming a bento brawl fighting machine. His journey, however, isn't without his ass getting beat like a rag doll. One night Sato woke up all bloody and bruised in the middle of a supermarket with no recollection of what happened to him. As he walked around the store, he noticed a girl watching him from the window and wondered who she was. After she walked away, he went to the bento aisle and found it empty, so he checked his wallet to see if he had enough money to get something else. Unfortunately, he was as broke as my ex, so he ended up buying a pack of fish cakes instead. As he walked out of the store, he remembered the girl who had been watching him and wondered what she'd said. Being the half-witted idiot that he was, he deluded himself into thinking she was trying to make a love confession to him. The poor dude thinks he has a chance. This made him imagine her in a very scandalous pose, causing his virgin brain to overload before he eventually passed out. The following day, he was discharged from the hospital, but he had no recollection of how he'd gotten there in the first place. As he walked to school, he met a girl named Hannah, who seemed to know him, but when he mentioned he didn't remember her, she began to cry. However, she suddenly perked up and acted like everything was fine, so he asked if she could tell him what happened, but she refused. When they got to school, he saw the white-haired girl taking out the trash, and when he remembered who she was, he tried to tell Hannah, but he couldn't find her anywhere. The next moment, the girl approached him and asked him to help her with the trash. As they walked together, he realized she was in her second year because of the color of her uniform, so he referred to her as senpai. When he asked why she'd been staring at him in the supermarket, she told him never to return there. Later on in class, while he was eating his fish cakes, Ume the class rep approached him, but he made a stupid joke about her name being repetitive, calling her Ume squared, prompting him to get squared in the face. She then told him to stay away from Hannah, but Sato made the mistake of asking if she knows what he did with Hannah the previous day at the supermarket. This seemed to make her mad because she immediately turned around and gave him another smackdown, returning his brain to factory settings. After school, he returned to his dorm, but since they didn't serve dinner, he found himself in front of the supermarket again. While he recalled the warning of his senpai, Hannah suddenly appeared behind him, startling him. As they walked through the store together, Sato didn't notice they were being watched by some other patrons. When they crossed paths with the white-haired girl, she reminded Sato of the warning she gave him earlier, but suddenly, Sato and Hannah noticed an employee place half-price stickers on the remaining bento. Sato immediately rushed towards them, thanking his stars that he wasn't going to sleep hungry. Unfortunately, he didn't make it to the stand and suddenly found himself lying on the floor with blood gushing from his head. When he tried to look up, all he saw was a pair of anime-thick thighs walking away. However, that was enough to jog his memory and finally recall what happened the previous day. He'd gone to the supermarket because he was hungry, but when he tried to pick up a bento, he became an unwilling participant in WWE Monday Night Raw. The next moment, he was forcefully woke from his dream by a bucket of cold water. The employee who dumped the water on him explained he was in the employee break room and asked him to take Hannah home when she woke up. Sato was still confused about how he got there, so the man explained he got his ass beat during the mad dash for the half-price bento. He then advised Sato to always go for the full-price bento if he wants to make it back home alive. Sato asked if the other patrons were some sort of gladiators since they turned the store into a coliseum just for some silly bento. To his surprise, the man was triggered and nearly punched him but stopped. He warned him not to let the other wolves hear him say that, unless he wants to die. When he turned to leave, he told Sato that the store was the hunting ground for the girl known as Ice Witch. This made Sato remember the thick thighs he'd seen earlier, but he kept quiet as the man walked away and Hannah woke up. The next day at school, Ume approached him again and asked what his relationship with Hannah was, but Sato didn't respond because he was too busy comparing her anime thick thighs to the Ice Witch. This was also why he didn't realize he'd been slapped multiple times until she walked away. That evening, Sato and Hannah went back to the store, and this time around he was determined to get a bento. As soon as the employee stepped away from the bento, Sato watched as patrons turned into savages, each refusing to let dinner slip away again. He rushed into the battle as Hannah cheered him on from the sidelines, and he was doing okay at first, but when he was almost taken out by a tag team, the Ice Witch saved him. He was surprised to learn his senpai is the legendary Ice Witch, and he watched in awe as she f***ed up everyone around. When he eventually tried to grab a bento, he got his ass beat again, and as he laid on the floor, the girl told him it was normal for weaklings to get mollywopped. However, she asked him to come to her club room the next morning if he wished to learn how to survive in the bento jungle. The next day, Sato stood in front of the club room but hesitated because he heard some pervy sounds from inside. When he opened the door, he didn't find the ecchi scene he was looking for but found Hana lying on the table, while the ice witch stepped on her back. The girl then welcomed him to the Half-Pricers Club and introduced herself as its only member and president, Yurizui. After his virgin brain froze due to this curious sight, Yurizui made it clear stomping on the backs of girls wasn't a part of her daily routine. Hana is part of the Light Novel Society, and spent the previous night bent over while working on her latest piece. The hours she spent as a keyboard warrior caused her spine to shift out of place, and the tight-clad legs of the witch were the only tools capable of correcting her hunched back, hence the 50 shades of roleplay Sato gloriously just witnessed. Yurizui then got Sato's toothpick legs trembling as she explains the need for discipline and training, as it's the only way the newborn puppies would ever stand a chance to rise through the ranks and become wolves. The next moment, Sato's virgin body received an abnormal surge of blood flow as the ice switch clouded his judgment with her biddies to sign his life away on the club admission form. Despite his attempts to resist her aura that had already placed Hana in a trance, he failed and officially became a member of the Half-Pricers Club. That night, Sato and Hana both went to Hookie Mart for the night's Hunger Games, and according to the crash course Yurizui gave them earlier, Hookie Mart was one of only 2 stores where they were allowed to hunt, as it was the only one where they could get proper fighting experience, because they're noobs. Wolf rule number 1, no one moves until the discount god leaves. Once the discount god was done placing stickers, the broke barbarians make their charge. However, Sato's bum ass was still lagging behind and failed to get a head start, which ultimately left him with an instant facelift, while the wolves of the day walked away with their desired boxes. Afterwards, he went to Tokiwa Mart with Hana, hoping for a successful second try. There, they met a Krillin reject who gave the pups a heads up as the grandpa discount god came in. Before they could finish analyzing the old discount god, Krillin told one of his partners named Tank about the presence of a dreaded nemesis called the boar. Just then, they saw Big Biddies trying to stop the cart of the boar herself. After she flung the biddies away, Krillin and Tank went to stop her from breaking the rules, while Miss Biddies warned the puppies before she passed out. Before they could understand exactly what was going on, Krillin and Tank had already boarded a flight on the Starvation airline, and the boar, who had snatched all the boxes in one fell swoop, made Gramps put on the stickers before she leaves. Seeing the way the boar blew through the entire store without giving a second thought, Sato remembers Yurizui's words about the ways of a wolf. But as the ways of the wolf had left them all without bento, they settled for the instant noodle cup, which made Sato realize why noodle cups were always sold out during the day. Later that night, while the inexperienced pups ended up sharing noodles, a creep show biker was stalking them from the soda machine. The next day at school, Ume pinned Sato to the wall under the stairwell to assert her dominance and ownership over Hana. When she realized that her suspect was more focused on her biddies than the questions, she brought him up to speed with a brain-resetting slap, followed by a punch that flipped him faster than my granny's pancakes. After stomping on the little brains he had left, she promised to win Hana back and marched away while the otaku classmate observed the live reenactment of his best hub vids. When Sato got to the club after school, Yurizui asked about Hana's absence, and he explained earlier that day he met up with Hana to ask about Ume, and she explained that the hothead marching towards them is a childhood friend that loves her novels. Before she could complete the explanation, Ume knocked her out with a pressure point chop and carried her away from the bandaged otaku. After, he tried to initiate a special after-school session with his senpai, but she proceeded to beat him 11 times at shogi, and then left to get ready for the Hunger Games, telling him to try getting something aside from noodles and a brain hemorrhage. After getting to Tokiwa Mart that night and meeting Miss Biddies, Krillin and Tank, a small battalion of giants walked in. His comrades told him the group was called the Tempest. They were the rugby club participating in the upcoming spring tournament, and their presence in the store meant no one else was getting a bento, so they decided to leave. But after seeing the boar enter the store and running into a guy they called the Wizard, who was the stalker from the previous night, Sato decided to hang back and grab a noodle cup. After getting back in the store, he watched as the feared bento warriors got into place, and when he tried to get a noodle cup, the Wizard told him to think again and says if he actually wants to be a wolf, stop acting like a bitch-ass bitch. Meanwhile, the giants are on the prowl and the boar is taxing all the regular shoppers, with the Wizard's words reminding him of his goal to become a wolf and Yurizui's teachings giving him motivation. He went to stop the boar from interrupting the old discount god, but his sudden spike in adrenaline was not enough to stop the boar, who tossed him like a bag of chips. The Wizard decided to take over and used the plus-size food burglar's weight against her. With the boar out of the way, the two of them got ready to take on the Tempest, who started dropping like flies when the Wizard started drop-kicking them mid-air. Sato regained his adrenaline rush, blocked some hits and tried to throw a few punches, but his lack of experience paired with the underfed cartilage he called Knuckles almost made him take another amnesia knockout. Luckily, Miss Biddies and the boys suddenly came back and saved him, then joined the other underdogs to take down the incoming storm, going nuts for some bento. After taking down the Tempest, Sato faced his comrades, with Tank going out first by a left hook to the brain and Miss Biddies with an uppercut that turned her ribs to bone broth. Last, Krillin goes out with a knee to the head, and with the Bento in sight, Sato lunges for it with everything he's got. Later on, Yurizu was done dominating her chosen store for the night, while a beaten Sato was barely making his way up the stairs and got a call from Ume. She threatened his life for making Hana upset for not responding to her texts, but he brushed it off and made his way to the club room where Yurizu confirmed she got the same threat from Ume. She noticed he won his first bento box and was surprised to see he grabbed the Laurel Reef seal, a special box handpicked by the discount god that made whoever got it the absolute top dog for the day. When he told her what went down at the store, she confirmed the wizard was a third-year student named Kaneshiro Yu, before whipping out a scrapbook littered with discount stickers she and the wizard got from their conquests. After adding his sticker to the collection, they microwaved their boxes, and she taught him the importance of prayers before they feasted. The next day, on their way to classes, some girls apologized to a wannabe monk named Dando, who was drying off his back at the entrance to the boys' locker room. Inside, the upperclassmen were discussing theories about a mysterious person who had jumped into the furnace outside the dorm. When a first-year boy told them the rumored caveman was an upperclassman who fell into the furnace while trying to get his uniform back, they couldn't believe it. Their theory of a random psychopath jumping into the school's furnace with his sword exposed made more sense to them. Earlier that day, Sato was on the classroom floor in just his undies because Ume had taken away his uniform while looking for his phone, which he planned to take after the previous night's threats. When he tried to get his classmates to back up his claim of leaving the phone in his dorm room, the only one who spoke to him was Yukatabu, who simply told him to enjoy his new life as Ume's sandbag. After that, he went to the club room where Yurizu told him to lose the uniform again. Hana, needing inspiration immediately, used the unfolding depravity for her next novel. When he realized she just wanted to help him patch up his torn clothes, he took them off and sat there, ashamed, while Hana made him nervous with her creepy staring. As Yurizu started fixing the clothes, she tried telling her subordinates about how expensive sushi was, but Sato's attention was mostly on Hana, who had taken 5 pictures of him in his undies and wanted one of the sword itself, making her possibly a bigger perv than Sato. When Yurizu tried to get him to pay attention, he told her to talk to him after fixing the pants as Hana was violating him with her eyes, making him uncomfortable. To solve his attention problem, Yurizu threw his clothes out the window, but before she could continue, Ume showed up. She came to apologize for the death threats, as she found out that Hana was going on the nightly Royal Rumbles for inspiration for a new novel she refused to talk about. Ume also came on official student council business, claiming she had allegedly become a council officer. Sato reminded her that the election results would be revealed during the weekend, but for some reason, she was already certain of her victory. She wanted to let Yurizu know that Sato and Hana's club admission forms had been approved, making the Half-Pricers a recognized club. She then left after telling them that the council officers started a job to pick up litter around the school compound to incinerate in the furnace. Sato, realizing his uniform would be considered litter, rushed out to stop them from burning it but ended up losing his undies as he jumped into the furnace and slipped out when one of the officers tried to grab him. Shit out of luck. Back at the locker room, the boys' commander told them about Yurizu's latest recruits and revealed his plan to get the puppies to join their pack. Dando-sensei, who was back from showing off his abs, heard of the plan and reminded Yamahara that he was a bitch-ass puppy, along with the rest of the so-called gundogs, not a wolf. Later that night, Heya escorted the furnace-baked otaku out of the hospital after he got bandaged up. When she asked if he still planned to fight for Bento, he reminded her that brokies like him had no choice but to fight. They went to the Tokiwa Mart where they met Yamahara. Inside, they found out that Dando-sensei had ties to Yamahara's gang, but with his teacher's salary giving him enough to eat one meal without breaking jaws, he was at the restaurant near school having rice and ramen. Yamahara told them he was part of the kendo club and leader of the gang of hounds that he wanted Sato to join. He gave Sato a gang jacket and promised him a bento in exchange for a test run with his boys. Once Gramps closed the door behind him, all hell broke loose as usual. After the hounds blew past the broke barbarians, Yamahara called Sato to pass through the middle of the hungry wolves held in place. Hana managed to get her first actual box, and Sato also got something but didn't seem as happy. When they went back to the court to eat, Sato wasn't as excited and asked for more time to think, so Yamahara left him with the jacket as goodwill. After they left, some boys told Yamahara that the Ice Witch's apprentice was a lost cause, but he was confident that the idea of easy bento would make Sato come back begging. Sato, who had gone back to the club room, told Yurizu everything that happened, and when she found out he didn't enjoy the famous cheese curry bento, she told him about the teachings of the association's founder, emphasizing the importance of the hunt. That night, he asked Hana if she wanted to join the tag team with the hounds tonight, and after initially getting excited, thinking he was talking about running a train on her, she accepted and cleaned off the lice that got on his hand after he pulled her hair for thinking out of pocket. He then spent the next few nights hunting with the hounds, unable to shake off the lack of satisfaction, while Hana stopped after the first night as she preferred the train idea. On a rainy afternoon in the club room, Yurizu told Hana about some of her escapades that earned her the Reed stickers, like walking 5 kilometers for a bento in a blizzard that broke down the bus during an excursion. After losing for the 23rd time, Sato explained to Hana that their senpai was unbeatable at shogi but wouldn't last a round against him in a video game. As he started geeking out about how the struggles to get better at gaming made the whole thing more exciting, he suddenly had a realization that stopped the rain. That night, he told Yamahara he finally had an answer to his proposal, and planned to give it later in his own way. When they did their usual routine and got to the boxes, Sato gave his answer by pushing the hounds out of formation and telling them that getting a bento box without fighting for it themselves made them Weenie Hut Juniors. As chaos broke out, Sato turned Yamahara into a bouncing sandbag with a hook that knocked out the wannabe Top G's body fluids. Meanwhile, Dando came to the store as his usual spot was closed and saw his boys getting their skulls mollywopped, and almost broke Sato's face, but stopped when the not-so-inexperienced fighter managed to block it while grabbing a box at the same time, and after Hana used stealth to get her bento box, they both left. When Yamahara tried to stop Sato, Dando told him that dogs like him, and the rest of his boys had no business with Sato, who had the eyes of a wolf. When they got back to the school building, Hana told him she was glad she met him and Yurizu as they were the first to treat her nicely despite her leaking nostrils and lice farm hair. After getting to the club room, Yurizu gave them the keys, proud that they realized the worth of the half-price boxes. When Sato tasted the food, he regained his lost excitement. Later inside the Kasamiya supermarket, the bento wars were on. This time, a blonde baddie with glasses was dominating, leaving all the hungry otakus in awe. A stalker, who seemed to enjoy being dragged around, called her the beauty of the lake. The next morning, Sato woke up to find the four-eyed baddie on his bed. Entranced by her presence and his own blood flow, he didn't notice his otaku magazines scattered around. Realizing this, he screamed so loud he woke the whole block. The girl turned out to be his cousin Shaga, and after reclaiming his magazines, he asked why she was there, only to be suplexed onto the bed reminding him of their Alabama roots. To Shaga, the boys in their family were like boyfriends she grew up with. Sato's an otaku obsessed with top-of-the-line hub magazines, but because Shaga's his cousin, he barely flinched when she hovered over him. Trying to stop her mind games, he asked why she had come, but she diverted the topic and started searching for a game to play. For the rest of that Saturday, his eyes were doing things his hands couldn't imagine, and after the last game she decided to use it against him after noticing. As she helped him get a better grip on the gamepad by providing biddy support, she asked for a favor, but he refused. So she promised to let him squeeze a biddy in return, but when he turned even that down, she took a closer look at him and realized that being in high school had given him a larger appetite.
What do you mean by that?
She then challenged him to a video game match. Her win meant he had to do her bidding and his win meant he could hold the biddies. However, Sato's a loser and his motivation wasn't enough, so he took an L. The next day, he met Hana at the park and asked why she was wearing her uniform on a Sunday. She claimed that she didn't know what to wear, but she's probably just broke. When she thought about why he asked her to bring a spare uniform for him, she suggested he was a cross-dresser and started tweaking. Sato, on the other hand, was wondering why his cousin had asked him to get her a uniform from his high school. The next day, he went to the club room and his brain lost connection to his legs after seeing Hana getting swallowed by Shaga's biddies. After Yurizu revealed Shaga was a wolf known as the Beauty by the Lake, Shaga told them about a battle between title-bearing wolves that happened whenever one of them trespassed on the other's territory. Since she had done just that, she and Yurizu agreed to have their battle at Hookie Mart. The four-eyed creep kept destroying Hana's biddies until the keyboard warrior passed out while trying to get back to her novels. Shaga wanted to see what she was rambling about, so she went over to the computer and found the otaku's latest work, Muscle Detective, a novel about a series of serial killings and a detective named Sato that used his cross-dressing skills to get into the suspect's lair, where he punished her with his special power pole. Sato noticed how similar the characters were to the people they've met, then closed the laptop before Shaga could permanently erase his innocence by reading the rest. The next moment, Ume busted down the door to figure out what Sato did to her precious Hana, and when she saw Shaga attacking Hana's melon tips again, she cracked his cheekbone with her elbow before interrogating the four-eyed creep.
What'd he say fuck me for?
With her status as a council officer, she already knew Shaga wasn't a student here, so when Shaga explained it was Sato that got her the uniform from Hana, she went back to finish him off with an uppercut and standing split kick. She stopped herself from giving him the usual beatdown to save some energy for Shaga, who she then dragged out of the club room for a haircare session to get her locks back in proper condition. Later that night, Sato got a text from Shaga and found her dressed like a Disney princess. She told him Ume took her back to her room for punishment, which was mostly a couple failed escape attempts as she was forced to take a scandalous bath before finally escaping with the first piece of clothing she could find. With no time to change, they went to Hookie Mart where Yurizu was already waiting. Tensions between the two title bearers rose when they found out they were both aiming for the same bento box. And with there being a lot more wolves than boxes, things are about to turn up. Before the fighting started, Shaga pulled Sato aside, and while he warned her of the dangers of a one-on-one with Yurizui, the choker stalker from earlier showed up, but no matter. Shaga decided to show Yurizui what's up by immediately taking out a bunch of ops as the fight started, but Yurizui didn't have time for a small fry and used a human beanbag to end Shaga's showboating and have their match. The first round ended in seconds after Yurizui used a deadly combination to restructure Shaga's spine, but Shaga retaliates by taking off her glasses and goes for round 2 using chopsticks to block the witch's jabs. After using the sticks to give her dress a thigh split, she used her legs to get close enough to deal some damage, but her guts ended up being the only thing damaged when Yurizui ended it with an uppercut to the belly. Sato got hyped up by their match and ended up in a battle of wits when his opponent grabbed the box with him at the same time. After he managed to secure the win, the stalker left and Shaga followed soon after when Yurizui squashed the rest of her pride by telling her to eat in their club room with them. While Sato chased after his cousin, the choker stalker called his boss, who's apparently planning to wage war against the wolves in the territory and doesn't care about casualties. Sato caught up with Shaga and sat at a park with her, but after Shaga stole a bite of his food, he gobbled down the rest fast as boy to keep her from stealing more. Then Shaga gave him a thank you hug before saying goodnight. Meanwhile, the pro choker had finished his investigation on Shaga and told his boss that she likely didn't reveal their plans yet. His boss's decision to wage war on the West was one that he didn't agree with, as it would lead to casualties on their end, leaving the choker questioning their honor as wolves. The next evening, Shaga was at her own school wondering where Sato is because they had plans to meet. Little did she know, Sato was in his undies at the front office while a wannabe Andrew Tate interrogated him for trespassing on school grounds. When Sato told him that he was trying to see Shaga, the bald eagle told him he was well aware of Shaga's beauty and its ability to attract simps to their school. This was why he stripped Sato, as he made it his life's mission to protect the princess from the simps that were desperate for her attention. Sato realized the danger he was in when Baldy whipped out a battery that he planned to stick in his manhole, so he bolted out of the office in horror. Meanwhile, as Shaga kept looking out for him from the window, the pro choker who was back on his spy mission called his boss to notify him of Shaga's plans to go hunting with her cousin, who was arrested at the main gates over an hour ago. Sato was now being chased by the school's entire security team and blew past him as he dropped a flyer for the Ralph store, giving the choker the last piece of information he needed. Shaga was starting to get fed up with the endless waiting but finally got a brief call from Sato asking for clothes. After she saw him about to get a battery shoved up his third leg, she opened up the back door and he managed to escape the bald-headed predator by running up the stairwell. After she put him in a girl's uniform and clowned him for the new look, her friend gave him a thick beanie to complete it and introduced herself as Inoue Asabi. Before he could shake her snot-soaked hand, Shaga gave her some money to get coffee from the vending machine. When she left, Shaga told him Asabi was a living bad omen that cursed whatever she touched. Sato watched as Shaga's protection charm burnt from Asabi's touch but didn't believe in such things until a thumbtack stuck to his rear after his stool suddenly broke. As they were about to head out for the nightly hunt, Shaga suggested going to a different store. But when he started rambling about the ad Yurizi gave him for the Ralph store, she decided to stick to the original plan. On their way out, he asked if Asabi was coming with, and she told him that the booger princess was likely going to take a rain check, as she was probably somewhere else, held up by her bad luck. Lo and behold, the snot midget was getting buried by cans of Coke after somehow messing up the wrong machine. According to Shaga, Asabi's never-ending bad luck caused her to always be in situations that made her catch a cold, which was why she was always wearing a beanie or sweater. Asabi also had a 500 megabyte processing brain that stopped her from realizing how unlucky she was, which was why she always managed to find a way to enjoy her misfortune. Sato, however, found no joy in his troubles as the wannabe Andrew Tate found him with his battalion of school guards. Luckily, Shaga distracted him with her legendary rice cake flashes and Sato escaped and managed to get to the Ralph store. However, everyone except Yurizi lost control of their lower jaws when they saw him. The choker stalker was expecting Sato to be a great rival and was especially disappointed in him. After Sato failed to convince them he wasn't a perv, the stalker promised to see to his demise and left after saying something about the Monarch crushing him. Yurizui then told him that the Monarch is the wolf in charge of this territory who uses cruel tricks to win, considering him dangerous to other wolves. Meanwhile, Shaga finally made it to the store and asked Yurizui why she was in the Eastern Territory knowing the Monarch could show up, and Yurizui blamed her decision on the Great Hokkaido Fair. Earlier in the club room, she found flyers for the Hokkaido Fair and told them the fair has bento rich in Hokkaido ingredients and sold for half off. Sato then got a call from Shaga telling him to come pick up Hana's uniform, and after asking her about the Hokkaido Fair, he left with the flyer as the Ralph store was on her territory. This was why Yurizi was at the store, as she wanted to protect her pet dog. Suddenly, The discount god known as the retired wolf Machon started placing the stickers, so they all picked out the boxes they wanted, and when Machon left, they started the gladiator matches. The girls easily snagged the boxes they wanted, and even Hannah with her signature stealth mode got one for herself. But when it got to Sato, he got blocked by an impenetrable wall of testosterone. The choker stalker then introduced him to his army called the Gabriel Ratchet, dedicated to serving the Monarch. Their mission was to ensure the gender-fluid Beta was put out of his misery, and after they surrounded him, the Monarch suddenly showed up and reopened Sato's head injuries. While he was getting his entire genetic makeup reorganized by the Monarch, his senpai and cousin that were supposed to be feared wolves simply watched as the Monarch used him to declare war on the Western territories, painting the store ceiling with Sato's red blood cells. Later, Sato woke up in the break room where Machon had wrapped up his cracked skull. The beatdown gave him amnesia again, and he stupidly thought Machon had popped his cherry in his sleep, so he started getting prepped for the second round. But when Yurizui and Shaga suddenly showed up with clothes for him, he tucked away his power pole in shame. But Shaga could sense his pervy aura and knew what was going on, so she tried helping Yurizui to take a closer look at the pole to embarrass him. After Hannah got their food and somehow kept her senses intact with what she saw, they ate, and Yurizui asked Shaga about her connection to the Monarch. Shaga then told them the Monarch was planning to attack the Western Territory after the Hokkaido Fair and had already assembled wolves from their territory for the mission. It's a plot for revenge over the defeat of the strongest Eastern wolf at the hands of a Western wolf. After stuffing her face, Shaga got up to leave, but Sato tried to stop her, as it was likely too dangerous to be alone in this. Shaga then told them the Monarch already saw her as a useless wimp, and she was done hearing the douche call her names, so she planned to start a training montage ahead of the attack. Meanwhile, Machon confessed her worries about the Monarch's plan to Kaneshiro and wished he could do something about it, but he was leaving the city soon to study abroad. Kaneshiro told her to leave the battle to fate, as the wolves would inevitably settle their disputes through natural selection, and left after calling her the Monarch Butterfly. Elsewhere, Yurizui summoned the wolves of the Western Territory to the park to discuss the Monarch's plans, and the wolves hid among the trees as she brought them up to speed. They ultimately settled on the need for training and preparation, as the Monarch's plans were quite unnatural and could only be solved by a show of strength. Yurizui told them that their hunger-fueled strength would not be enough, as the Monarch was triggering a different kind of hunger in her that they couldn't understand. She then decided to infiltrate Monarch's stronghold herself, the Ralph store, while Sato and Hannah were to take care of her territory until she got back. When Sato asked her why she was planning a solo suicide mission, she told them about the Ralph store's wreath box, a fried chicken bento box handmade by Machon herself, just for the wolves. She claimed she just wanted to taste the former wolf's fried chicken, but as she left, she revealed her true intentions to take down the Monarch. Meanwhile, Shaga learned of the Monarch Butterfly from a worker, hearing she was the strongest wolf of the East, and a year ago she faced off against the Wizard, the strongest in the West. After defeating her, Kaneshiro was found unconscious outside the store with an empty bento after gobbling down the meal until blackout. Tadaki was Machon's junior in college, and after she retired from the Hunger Games to focus on her marriage, he took over the East as the Monarch. Shaga then found out his mission to take over the West was a facade, as his actual goal as the Monarch Butterfly's successor was to defeat the Wizard's successor and get revenge for the defeat of his retired senpai. At the Tokiwa store that day, Sato was with the biddies trying to figure out how to get their meals with the Monarch's dogs in their way. But when Shaga came and dragged him outside, she told him what the retired wolf had told her and revealed Yurizui was in danger. Before he could pick up the phone to check on her, they heard from a random person that a high school girl had been attacked somewhere in the east and immediately figured it was Yurizui and rushed to the location on Shaga's bike. When they got there, they found a group of people gathered around a bloodied sidewalk, but she wasn't there, so they went back on the bike to find her. Meanwhile, at the Ralph store, Machon was talking to Nikedu about the rumors regarding the upcoming battle, and when Yurizui staggered into the store with her signature thick thigh tights ripped up, she told him he's a whole bitch-ass bitch. She told him she was ashamed of him. Yurizui went to talk to the Monarch, and after he tried to roast her, he was about to finish what he started, but Nikedu stopped him. He tried to tell Tadaki his dream to take over as the Monarch Butterfly was impossible, but got his face broken before he could finish. Tadaki then told Machon to prepare the stickers, and after preparing them while thinking about the good old days, she left in tears while Nikedu was taking a floor nap. However, before the battle started, Sato and Shaga finally showed up to roast the Monarch with Yurizui. But when the Monarch's rumbling belly caused a small earthquake, they all put on their game faces. They started by taking out the Gabriel Ratchet dogs while yapping about honor, but when the Monarch's fist connected with Sato's fat head, his honor wasn't good enough to keep him standing. The Monarch told them he fasted for 3 days ahead of the fight, which meant his strength was amped up by hunger they couldn't understand. But when Yurizui popped his liver and cracked his jawbone, she explained that his desire to defeat her made his fasting useless. Due to her common sense, Yurizui knew that she couldn't take him down alone, especially because he was trying to use a shopping cart to end her existence. So with help from Shaga and Sato, she managed to knock him off his feet, which created an opening Sato used to punch the bitch-ass his face into the ground. After their victory, Yurizu left her comrades to fight for their food, and when she got outside she met Hana, who confirmed their home turf was safe, and after Sato came out victorious they all left to eat. Meanwhile, Nikita finally woke up from his nap and Machon apologized for not resolving the beef from her time, and told him to be free. His choker was removed and the Gabriel ratchet dissolved. Later, after they stuffed their faces with Sato's fried chicken, Shaga passed out on Sato's lap, and Hana immediately got motivation for her new piece, because she's a little sick in the head. Sometime later, Shaga showed up to their club room to tell them she received tickets to the totally Hawaiian pool park from Machon, and was told to share it with them. Sato's blood flow got the best of him, and immediately accepted, thanking his cousin for being thoughtful, cause he wanna see some skin for real. Later that weekend, they all boarded a train to the pool and played cards to kill time, and broke-ass Sato was already complaining about the price of the train tickets. So Machon reminded him that getting free pool tickets should have given him enough reason to shut it. When she talked about all the fun activities they would enjoy at the pool, he couldn't help himself and started spacing out, thinking about Machon's biddies. After remembering Yurizu was his ultimate goal for the day, he then spaced out thinking about her, and by the time he was back in reality, he had lost the game, as well as any good thoughts Yurizu had towards him, as he wasn't paying attention. When they got to the pool, he failed their second match and was designated as their butler, which turned out to be a lot worse than he expected, as Hana decided to bring all her riding equipment to capture his pervy escapades during the day. To make matters worse, they left him there after realizing his ticket was missing, so he had to pay out of pocket anyway, and was left with only 300 yen to manage till the end of the day. After getting his ticket, he noticed Nikaido was also coming to the pool, and when Nikaido noticed Sato he started calling him perv like it was his name. When they got to the locker room, Nikaido expressed his emotionless shock to see that the great perv had regular swimming trunks. Before Sato could get to the bottom of the perv title Nikaido keeps spouting, they overheard Shaga fondling Hana through the vent, so Sato eagerly tried to manifest X-ray vision to get a better look. And when Nikaido overheard them talking about Machon's biddies, he longed for a better look too. When they went out to the pool, Shaga invited Sato over to the bench that they saved, and as the boys came over, Sato saw Yurizu and temporarily became mute as he assaulted every inch of her swimsuit-clad body with his eyes while Nikaido did the same to Machon's body. Later on, after getting smacked with a beach ball, Sato went to get it back and accidentally bumped into a mysterious silver-haired girl who turned out to be a twin. On his way back, he saw a poster for ice-cold beer, and when he got to the table, he asked Yurizu for the origins of her Ice Witch title. Apparently, her name was given to her after she saw a can of ice-cold beer in her first year, and bought it without knowing it was alcohol. Shaga's name also wasn't as glamorous as expected, as she was given the title because she blacked out on a bench by the lake park after getting her first wreath bento box. Before they could figure out Sato's title, an announcement was made informing the parkgoers of the bento boxes for sale, and although Sato was desperate for a bite, he was way too broke to even consider getting one. That's when they noticed Miss Biddies and her boys also came to the park, as well as the Snot Princess, who fell off a truck and found Sato's ticket. When they all noticed a sudden shift in aura around the park, Machon told them the park also had a discount bento sale that happened 1 hour before closing on Sundays. The bentos for that day were then carted in and turned out to be a lot similar to dishes at the Ralph store, as both establishments were owned by the same corporation. Once sticker time came, a mascot dolphin discount god came out and ripped off an arm in order to place the stickers. He then placed the stickers and floated the dishes on the pool with something they called the Forever Fresh balls. Seeing as everyone already knew what they wanted, the discount god made his exit and the water park version of the Hunger Games began. This is when they finally confirmed Sato's new wolf title, the Pervert. And although it's facts, he's not happy about it. A battle takes off between Shaga and Tank while Miss Biddies tried to take on Sato, but ended up jiggling her biddy wrap away. And you know what that means, fellas, heavy blood flow. After Shaga defeated Tank and noticed Sato hiding his activated flashlight, naturally, she went over to torment him. Meanwhile, Nikaido was on the other side of the pool fantasizing about the biddy omelet bento made by Machon, but when Yurizu put him in a leg lock, it knocked him out by shifting his brain to the pool floor, giving her biddy omelet victory. Meanwhile, Sato managed to escape from Shaga, and as she fought the others, he suddenly started moving at incredible speed towards the bento. When they took a closer look, they realized he was using the pool's suction vents and an enormous third leg to increase his speed, shocking Shaga as she didn't know he was packing. With his speed he secured the bento, but during his celebration, his third leg was revealed to be the dolphin's ripped arm that also made his pants fall while he wasn't paying attention, revealing his baby carrots. Now everyone believes he's a pervert for sure, and apparently Ume is also here, as she showed up just in time to drop him with a kick to the head before leaving with Hana. Later on, after meeting up with Yurizu, she stuck the reed sticker to his face so they wouldn't lose it, and Shaga ate her claimed bento with them, and by the end of it all, Sato found Yurizu on a park bench passed out from a good day. Sometime later, Shaga was running through the hallway with Asabi when the twins from the pool suddenly told them to cut that shit out. They behaved, but when Asabi ran ahead she fell down the entire stairwell like a dumbass. Meanwhile, the sisters are revealed to be part of the student council and had a meeting to talk about their efforts to better their relationships with other high schools. Later that day, Shaga went over to Sato's school to smoke Yurizu on the game box while Asabi was busy choking him with her home-baked cookies. But when Asabi also took a crack at the game and beat Yurizu's ass, Yurizu asked Sato what the game box was worth, then suddenly chucked it out the window. Sato immediately jumped out of the window after it, and after a couple milliseconds of thinking about birds, he realized why humans were different and started falling. Hana, once again, found this inspirational for her pervy novel and finally got out of a slump, filling her latest edition with top-quality content. Back at Shaga's school, the twins had finally finished their meeting and one of them was upset about something she desperately wanted. While Hana was destroying her keyboard that night, Sato was getting brought back from the great beyond at the hospital, and the depressed twin decided she was done waiting and brought out clothes to go find a certain someone they were desperate to see. The clothes she whipped out turned out to be nurse costumes they used to infiltrate the hospital where Sato was getting treated, and after nearly being caught, they found a room to hide and plan their moves. Sato woke up and found himself fully bandaged, unable to say anything, prompting Shaga to suggest he use his new condition to practice the bondage roleplay he'd been reading in his otaku magazines. Meanwhile, one of the twins was outside his door and overheard Shaga calling Yurizu the witch before they all left the room. While the fake nurse went to set up a plan with her sister, Yurizu went back to Sato's room to apologize for trying to break his game box and offered to share her next bento box with him as a way of saying sorry. The twins were now certain they found the ice witch, and one of them was weirdly excited and almost left the item they brought for the mission before she left. While she made her way to Sato's room, the cool-headed twins stared out the window, remembering the first time they saw the witch outside Hookie Mart after she had successfully defeated her enemies. They heard about Yurizu's battle with the Monarch and how she was the current strongest threat of the territory with her newly formed Half-Pricers Association, leading to their obsession to find her. However, they don't realize Sato isn't the witch. Before getting into Sato's room, they ran a systems check to make sure the data collection equipment was properly set up, and immediately she got in, stuck a thermometer in his mouth and set up a camera. Since Sato couldn't talk to the hot nurse that was climbing his bed to check his height, he responded to her touch by almost having a heart attack as his blood flow started rising like crazy. The twin who thought she had pissed off the witch with her methods left and switched places with her sister, who had a more professional approach to the mission. Sato immediately noticed an entirely different personality, but didn't care as long as biddies were suffocating him just the way he liked. After the first one came back once again and failed to get the required information, she switched places like before and the cool-headed twin went straight to business by punching the bandaged otaku in the gut to see if the witch had core strength. While they were looking through the information they found, they saw Shaga as she went into Sato's room through the camera. She came to show him the bento box she was targeting for the night, and left after promising to enjoy it for him. Hearing this, the hot-headed twin blew a fuse as she didn't understand why the witch was allowing herself to be spoken to in such a degrading way. Once she got to his room, she started questioning her about her lack of self-respect, as that's not what she expected from the feared witch who inspired her that night outside the mart. While she continued her interrogation, Shaga told Yurizu about the torture she put Sato through to motivate him to return, revealing the over-exaggerated bandages was a prank special requested to Asabi's parents, who ran the hospital. Meanwhile, Sato was trying to figure out if the hot nurse was trying to initiate some abnormal roleplay or if she was simply a crazy bitch, when he suddenly was saved by the head nurse that almost caught the twins. The twin tried to play it cool and leave, but the nurse smelled something fishy and called her back. Her residence clothes simply needed correction. Then she handed her more bandages for the injured boy before leaving. Seeing this as the perfect opportunity, the twin immediately started ripping off Sato's bandages, hoping to get a closer look at the witch's body, but after seeing some not-so-girly calves and a baby carrot, she ran away and alerted the entire facility to the presence of a psycho in bandages that traumatized her. Sato immediately chased after her to save his already ruined reputation, but after Asabi spilled hot milk over him, he fell to the ground wishing he had kept the bandages on. While Hana was at the hospital looking for something new to write, she sees Sato's sad state and found the perfect story that gave her blood flow out of pure excitement. The twins realized that the person they thought was the witch was actually the rumored pervert that terrorized the territory with his creep show activities. After, the sisters found their lost excitement from the abnormal night and ran outside together. And later, Shaga went to the Kasamiya supermarket to grab a drink and saw the twins leaving with bento boxes. After seeing them, she turned to find the bodies of beaten wolves and dogs littering the store. Sometime later, after waking up in her master bed, Asabi started her day by managing to break the bed in half, before jumping out of the window to catch her stuffed animal. Somehow, she survived the fall, and later on she met up with Shaga and told her she wanted to make a bento for Sato, who allegedly loved the cookies she made him earlier. And as Asabi left school, Ume walked right past her but gave her no mind, but didn't notice Shaga, as she was hiding for her life. While Asabi was at home whipping up Sato's bento, Sato was on the hallway floor with a fresh handprint from Ume, and when he went back to the club room, Hana asked about his new face tattoo. And when he gave her the simplified version, she somehow managed to twist his words into another story of depravity. After Yurizui gave him some ice for his face, Shaga and Asabi showed up to the clubroom, and before Asabi gave him the bento, Shaga gave him a charm used to ward off evil spirits and wished him luck. But when he saw the Michelin star boxes, he wondered why Shaga was overreacting, as the Snot Princess curse apparently didn't affect her culinary. But when he took his first bite, Sato quickly realized he f***ed up. Somehow the chicken tasted like a banana, and with his vision suddenly blurring, he decided to take a second bite from the beans and tasted a combination of sugars that made absolutely no sense. He then decided to take a bite from the onigiri, as there was no way she could manage to ruin the rice, but his doubts were reassured when it tasted like absolutely nothing, and he started leaking buckets of sweat while losing grip on reality. Asabi kindly asked him to make sure he finished the entire meal, but he couldn't hang and ultimately succumbed to the taste deconstruction bento. Earlier that day, Ume made her way into Shaga's school, with Asabi's minor accident giving her an explosive intro as she walked in while ignoring Shaga's failed hiding attempt. Apparently, the council twins called her in to review tapes of the day Sato engaged in a high-speed chase against the school's security force. They pulled out the big guns to take him out, and the twins argue it traumatized the students. With the evidence being undeniable, they requested a formal apology from Ume, but she immediately clapped back with a photo of Shaga from the day she was fondling Hana's biddies. With both schools being equally in the wrong, they apologized to each other, leaving the hot-headed twin in emotional torment, as she was desperate to get a proper apology out of the obnoxious stud. Later, Ume went back to school and found Sato in the hallway, resulting in the red handprint he carried around the rest of the day. Before heading home that evening, Ume saw her precious Hana talking to Sato outside the school building, and while taking a dip in the bath, she decided to call her. Meanwhile, Hana lost all her writer's block after Sato's recent escapades, and noticed she was slowly passing the 10,000 reader mark when she got the call from Ume. After picking up the call, Ume asked her precious Hana if she was okay, but Hana ended up spilling coffee next to her laptop, and when she tried to get some napkins to clean the mess, she got whacked in the head by the dozens of books on her shelf. And to make matters worse, one last book dropped on the laptop, putting it out of commission. Hana immediately gave up and went to sleep, while apologizing to her precious novel character Saito. Ume realized something was wrong, and immediately sprung into action. A couple hours later, Hana woke up with a towel on her forehead, and saw Ume bedside asking if she's okay. According to Ume, Hana passed out after taking some Shakespeare straight to the brain, and after she got to her room, she helped her get changed and found out she had a fever. Hana tried to explain things, but she clearly couldn't see Ume was a psycho who created fictional stories to support her delusions. In this case, the story was Hana's illness, which made it easy for her to finally get some alone time with her. After checking Hana's temperature by connecting their bodies together, she brought out some porridge she made for her, and after feeding Hana, she told her to get ready for a pat down. Minutes later, Hana was suddenly on the bed with the lights out and her back open to Ume.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
Who was cleaning up her sweat with a towel. When Ume tried to get freaky by going full commando with her, she tried to make her stop by falling on her, but all she did was cause her special edition Muscle Daddy magazine to fall out of its hiding place. Ume saw the magazine and immediately left to find the culprit, disappointing all my viewers. The next day, Sato was on his way to class when Ume stopped him and mollywopped his face as a way of saying good morning, then asked him about the magazine. When he tried to deny any knowledge, she showed him his fat face littered all over the bodies of gym rats. Before continuing the interrogation, he told her Hana was into gym rats and was writing the muscle detective novel with a character that was based on him. All the confession did was make the following mollywop stronger than usual. And while Uchimoto hid in the shadows listening, the other girls passing by finished off the assaulted otaku by calling him names, making him think his life as a degraded boy toy wasn't so bad after all. Later, the nightly Hunger Games ended terribly for Miss Biddies when two girls knocked her out and covered her head with a basket before leaving in disappointment, as her weakness was not enough to satisfy them. At school the next day, Shaga was stuffing her face when the council twins arrived and demonstrated their level of etiquette before asking her about the monthly activity form her club did and fill. After giving her the form to give to their non-existent president, they showed her the photo where she was harassing Hana and asked for an explanation. When she told them she was there to see Sato and the witch, the hot-headed twin wanted to ask her a few questions about Yurizui, but her sister suddenly stopped her and asked about the alien playing games in the office as a distraction before they escaped. The Asabi alien was sticking her head out the window to see Baldi and his battalion trying to insert batteries into someone's flashlight, so Sato must be on campus. Shaga waited until she was done with the form to see what was going on and found Asabi missing, which explained the damage she was looking at in the compound before she saw Nikaido. Meanwhile, Sato was at the hospital that evening for his last examination and left to prepare for his return to Hunger Games, after emptying his wallet for the hospital bill. On his way home, he walked by the Kasamiya supermarket where a group of people were gathering. Meanwhile, Nikaido told Shaga a new threat named Orthus was in town, taking out the feared wolves of the east like they were noobs. And when Sato went to see what was going on, he found the Monarch in a sad state, wondering who f***ed him up. According to Nikaido, Orthus is a duo of two girls looking for strong opponents to challenge, and he got his intel from Miss Biddies who could only catch their thick thighs before passing out. Later that night, Shaga tried to get Sato to go to an eastern store with her, but Yurizui already told him to go to the Kamoshida store as it would be easier to get back into groove with minimal competition. The next day, Hana spent her school hours trying to find a new angle for her novel, and after Yurizui wished them luck while beating Sato's ass at chess, she found one. Later that night, Sato was on his way to the store as Shaga looked out for the deadly duo, but left after seeing the council twins also walk in, that dumb bitch. Once inside, Sato became excited from being around the hungry wolves, ready for some action. As he was taking a closer look at the bento, the twins came in, and he finally understood why the hot nurse kept switching personalities at the hospital, before the discount god left the store. Later on, Shaga came back and walked in to find bodies littered, and Sato's head covered with the Orthus signature basket. He woke in the park later where Nikaido explained what was going on before leaving him with a snack. Meanwhile, the twins got in the shower and talked about how Sato was actually a lot weaker than they expected, especially since he's allegedly the one who took down the Monarch. With the pervert not being enough to satisfy them, they decided to go through the western stores to find the ice witch. The next day, Sato saw a book about Orthus, a two-headed wolf that got both of its brains smashed when Hercules came for Hades' sheep. But suddenly Yurizui woke up, and as she got some water, Sato tried to explain his ail when she interrupted him by telling him to follow her to the usual store, so they could get a box to celebrate his return. That night, he reunited with everyone at the store, including the council twins who finally introduced themselves as Sawaji, Kyo, and Kyo. With the introductions complete, they got into place. And when the discount god walked out, it was business as usual with jaw-cracking uppercuts and brain-resetting mollywops across the store. Things quickly switched up when Sato saw Shaga on the ground before he went airborne and saw darkness around him. That darkness ripping through everyone was from the twins, revealing them as the rumored Orthus, here to take down the ice witch with their baskets of darkness. As they double-teamed her with a shower of punches that opened her head, Shaga got back up and busted out her chopsticks while Sato joined in to help his senpai. Their combined efforts ended up being useless as the twins cut them down in an instant before turning Yurizui into a human tornado. As the great ice witch stayed on the floor passed out, the girls roasted her for being a weak bitch, and left with their bento while the rest of the fighters simply watched in confusion. After they left the store, the twins were heading home when Nikaido managed to drag himself out, and asked them to wait as he propped himself up on a truck. He wanted to know more about them, and since the sisters were hungry for more exciting fights, they exchanged numbers with him, so he might have a chance. He got the number. A win is a win is a win. The next day, Kyo had to tell her sister to quit making weird noises in bed as the neighbors were starting to suspect them. Her sister was still taking in the excitement of their victory against the feared ice witch, and they both felt extremely proud of themselves for living out the life they always dreamed of. When they were in grade school, they happened to be in a store one evening and watched the legendary bento wars between the fighters they later found out were wolves. Ever since then, they knew what they wanted and went as far as making their dreams known on career day. Now years had passed, and they had finally become the honorable wolves they always wanted to. But Kyo's sister was still unsure of their honor, as she claimed she had destroyed Sato's dignity during the fight, with a soul-crushing verbal assault. She must not realize the pervert's dignity was already far gone. To fix her troubled conscience, Kyo suggested talking to him about it when next they got the chance, which made her feel better. The next day, a brooding Sato was on his way to school when a panda-eyed Hana caught up to him and started yapping like a crack addict. She apparently spent the entire night writing the latest chapters of her book by hand, as her laptop was still out of commission. Sato was still obsessing over Yurizui's defeat, and blamed himself for letting his guard down. His self-loathing made him oblivious to Hana suddenly getting kidnapped by Ume mid-conversation. Meanwhile, he planned to apologize to his senpai. When he couldn't find Yurizui in her classroom, He was leaving when Miss Biddy stopped him to say Yurizi wasn't in school. After she told him about her plan to skip the night's Royal Rumble because of Yurizi's defeat, he told her to find her courage and walk into battle with her biddies in their full glory. I'm sure the pervert would love that. Meanwhile, Shaga was also at school asking some baddies about the twins, but all they cared about was the Riz Kings they were texting, so they left her to disappoint Nikaido with her incompetence. And later, Sato went to Yurizi's place to figure out why she didn't come in and found out she'd been feeling under the weather lately, and it got worse the previous night, so she'd been in bed today hiding away after her pride-crushing defeat. Sato expected her to say that and barely managed to get words out as her sick face was causing an unexpected effect on his virgin brain before he told her he brought some food. After snapping him out of his doctor fantasies, Yurizi drank some water, and when he pointed out her fever, she promised to get better. When he apologized for her defeat, she told him that she lost due to her own weakness and promised to be back on her feet for the next battle. There was a special fresh eel bento that was going on sale the next day on the summer solstice at Audrey's store, and she was planning to get the extremely rare boxes after taking down the twins. Later that evening, Sato got a text from Nikaido telling him to come to Tokiwa Mart, where the twins were waiting to apologize for their words from the previous night. When he got there, he told them they never called him a no bitches having ass pervert virgin loser. Kyo pulled her sister aside for an I told you so session. Then the sisters decided to actually trash talk the weaklings so they would have a reason to apologize next time. So they called him a no bitches having ass pervert virgin loser. The next day, the boys met with Shaga, who roasted them for getting a second beatdown from the twins at Tokiwa Mart. Shaga then told them about her investigation that had led her to the Sonic store, a large group of supermarkets in a nearby town named Yumahiro that was managed by the Sawaji Corporation, which was governed by the Kyo sisters' father. According to Shaga's theory, the twins were wolves in Yumahiro until something happened 3 years ago that made them skip town. Nikaido immediately left to go look for leads on the theory, as it could be a secret to help them defeat the sisters. After he left, Sato wanted to go tell the sisters about Yurizi's invitation to the summer solstice Bento fight, but when he saw Baldi with his batteries, his traumatized body automatically made a swift exit. Shaga was then left to deliver the message to the twins, who also invited her to join before going to the council office to share their excitement. Meanwhile, Sato went over to Yurizi's place and found she got worse overnight, so he went to get her some medicine as she was still hell-bent on having the fight for the Bento. Meanwhile, Nikaido finally got to Yumahiro and went to meet a wolf Machan told him about. The wolf told him their local customs were against telling, as they could get his wolf status terminated, but seeing as he had some rodent genes, he ended up telling Nikaido about the twins who reigned supreme in their town 3 years ago until a club known as the Club of Hercules took them down. While Nikaido was getting a history lesson on the twins, one of them woke up from a nightmare about the solstice night. Meanwhile, Nikaido worried about the twins' safety, as the rat wolf told him about a certain guy was likely to make a move against the twins on the night of the solstice. Later, the night of the solstice has arrived and Yurizi was still sick but determined to get Bento, so she set an alarm for sale time. When Sato tried to talk her out of it, she told him her sickness was another reason she had to get the box, as her body needed nutrients that could only be found in the Bento. After falling asleep while rambling about Orthus, Sato fixed up her towel and left after messing with the alarm and writing a note for her to see when she wakes. Meanwhile, after washing her face, Kyo broke character for the first time, worried about the guy who took them out 3 years ago showing up tonight. While her sister helped her feel better, Shaga was with Nikaido discussing the same guy who had took the sisters down during the solstice 3 years ago. Meanwhile, Sato was on his way to get the Bento for Yurizi when he was stopped by a weirdo who wanted to make a deal. If Sato helps him with his problem, he helps Sato get bento for the girl. After the abnormal conversation under the train, Sato felt conflicted and wondered what to do. Later, when Miss Biddies and the boys got to Audrey Mart that night, they saw Sato suddenly running away, then had a conversation with the same creep that stopped him earlier. Nikaido and Shaga also ran past Sato before they got there, then saw the faces of the starving wolves eagerly waiting for Bento. The twins finally arrive as well, then see a familiar face that fills them with dread. As he walked towards them, he brought up their last encounter, then told them to remove themselves as he didn't like hurting girls. Nikaido and Shaga then took a closer look before realizing he was the Hercules that took down the twins in Yumahiro. When the sisters refused to leave, he told them the rest of the fighters had already agreed to hold off the Hunger Games until they left, but the girls seemed convinced someone would be willing to fight them. After mentioning Sato, he told them the spineless simp had already taken off in shame, and the rest of the store overhearing this couldn't believe someone was able to get the pervert to back down. According to Hercules, 3 years ago in Yumahiro, on the night of the solstice, the twins went into the local store for a night of adrenaline-fueled uppercuts and dropkicks. But when they got to the store, everyone stopped moving. The creep somehow convinced everyone to let the twins take whatever they want without a fight. as they already knew that the girls couldn't be defeated. The wolves were tired of getting knocked out in seconds by two freshman girls and decided they would only fight after the girls left the store. This was how the great Orthus was defeated, as all they ever wanted was to face strong opponents in their quest for strength. And just like the year of their defeat, the discount god brought out the boxes and no one moved a muscle against them. The twins then accepted their fate and started heading to the boxes, but Shaga tried to make a move and the creep reminded her of her place with his soul-piercing gaze. Suddenly, Sato walked in drenched in sweat and rain, but to everyone's surprise he ignored the twins and went to the back with the rest of the spineless wolves. After the discount god put on the last sticker, which was a laurel wreath, he left the store. The sisters once again lost hope and decided to go out in a bento-filled blaze of glory, as they were still hungry. As they made their way to the boxes, Shaga was helping Nikaido adjust to their new reality when she noticed Sato acting like he was getting possessed by hunger. Before she could make another move, Sato stopped her and told her to listen to the wise whispers of the belly. Just then, the entire store experienced a massive earthquake from the rumbles of Sato's belly, and the rumble psychically connected to all the starving wolves in the store, triggering a mass rumble that shifted the store's foundations. Sato reveals he ran away in order to work up his appetite, knowing full well the rumble of his hunger would remind the other wolves why they're here, and without words, they charged towards the boxes. The twins watched in disbelief as the wolves found their balls again and started fighting each other over bento. According to Tank, Sato reminded them of the honor in fighting for their food, which the creep almost made them forget. The creep didn't like being defied and decided to show them why he was known as Hercules by breaking heads and dislocating joints. But Sato was eager to teach him a lesson, and used his fists to explain how a true wolf pounced on his enemies instead of cowering like a wuss. Shaga and Nikaido also regained their passion and started fighting along Sato, kicking ass while telling the creep not to underestimate the pervert. The twins are overwhelmed by this and have tears of joy, but the creep tried to stop them again, and ended up pledging his allegiance when they gave him consecutive body shots forcing him to take a knee. And when the twins' bellies started to rumble they decided to join in. The main event finally kicked off, and as the basket demons went to town on the wolves, Hannah walks in and sees enough drama to write a full sequel to her pervy novel. Later that night, they're all at the park eating their eel bento while the twins were eating ramen after taking their first real loss. As they all rubbed their victory in the twins' faces, Sato went to Yurizu's place to give her the eel bento he promised. As a thanks, Yurizu suggested he take the first bite, as it's only fair since he fought for it. After taking thanks like his senpai taught him, he took his bite and thought it was the best eel he ever tasted. When Yurizu also took a bite, she thought the same thing, and when she looked to Sato, he expressed that no matter how weak or strong, everyone deserves a chance to fight for bento. Yurizu agrees, and it's a good night. If you've watched for this long you probably enjoyed this video, so watch this next one. Until next time.